And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important IU basketball stories from the past 7 days. This is our 87th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 418th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, August 2nd, 2018. I am your host, Jared Morris. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes a shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment occurred on Wednesday when the official Twitter account of the IU Excellence Academy tweeted out that it was open for business. Specifically, the Tobias Nutrition Center opened and hosted the women's soccer team for its first meal. So what does this have to do with the men's basketball team? Well, everything. The IU Excellence Academy, which is located in the south end zone of Memorial Stadium, is much more than just a nutrition center. It is a 120,000 square foot complex dedicated to helping all IU student athletes develop academically, athletically, and personally. As Zach Osterman wrote in the Indianapolis Star, when it is completed, it will include facilities geared toward athlete health, training, wellness, career development, leadership, and life skills. In combination with the impending locker room renovations, the recent renovations to Simon Scott Assembly Hall, and the daily impact of Cook Hall, the Excellence Academy will give Archie Miller and his staff yet another impressive set of facilities and resources to sell to top prospects, and, importantly, their parents when they are on recruiting visits. When you're competing with other big-time programs for 5-star and 4-star prospects, you have to have facilities that stack up to give yourself a fighting chance. After falling behind there for a while, Indiana is doing what is necessary to catch back up in a big way. And even more than its impact on attracting recruits, the Excellence Academy will go a long way toward developing Indiana's players while they are on campus. This should result in better diets, better injury prevention and treatment, and better mental and emotional health as well. All of which is going to have an impact on the court, even if we don't think about it while watching the games, because games aren't just won or lost during the 40 minutes that tick off the clock. All of the preparation and recovery that happens in between matters too. As we know, the margins between winning and losing at the highest levels of college basketball in recruiting and on the court can be razor thin. The launch of the Excellence Academy is yet another reason to believe a lot more consistent winning is on the horizon for the IU men's basketball team, and hopefully all of the other 23 IU sports as well. All right, let me now introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. To my left, he is the Rick Carlisle of girls youth sports coaching in Cincinnati. He is the president emeritus of the Robert Johnson Fan Club, and he is a world-renowned bracketologist.
Look up Bracket Matrix, you'll see Andy has been on the top of the list of the veterans.
He is Andy Bottoms, fresh off celebrating his 40th birthday earlier this week, his Calvert Chaney year. Happy birthday, Andy. What's your Bottoms line?
I thank you for the Calvert Chaney starting lineup.
Hey, it came.
Yeah, it arrived. So I'm
That's awesome.
Strongly about sending this thing in on the back to join the starting lineup collector club for 1 year for only $7.99. Feels like a great deal. So yeah. The gift that keeps on giving for sure. For me this week, it was funny. My daughter had a couple games tonight, and the second of which was a pretty hard fought game. One of the worst officiated games I've ever seen. It would have made.
Was it Ted Valentine?
No, it was not. We would have made Bo Borowski proud. It was pretty rough, but the girls came over to the bench, and one of them said, "This is fun. This kind of game is fun." And it's funny. It kind of struck me. I was like, well, that was my favorite part of the entire game, was her saying that. The fact that we pulled away and won certainly helped, but kind of in the midst of a hard fought game where emotions were pretty high, for somebody to be able to sit back and say, like, this was fun. And so you kind of put that in the context of the offseason and some of the stuff that you hear about these guys. They posted the video of having, the guys at the lake, I think yesterday or the day before. And it seems like the team has struck a pretty good balance in the offseason of doing stuff that's fun, a lot of team bonding. They seem to be a pretty tight-knit group. Obviously, they're not going to show you guys fighting with each other in practice on social media, but let's assume that what we've seen is relatively representative of how these guys are getting along. But then you also see and hear about all the work that they're putting in. And so it seems like the Archie and the staff have struck a pretty good balance over the course of the offseason. And in an ideal world, that pays dividends and leads to some fun post-game shows for us as we move forward through the season.
And to my right, he is a columnist for The Big Lead, a co-host for The Hangover, and he's probably not happy about our collective decision to have a no interruption policy for tonight's show because...
Let me just jump in real quick.
Ryan, no interruptions. That is what we all agreed upon for this show.
You got to get that disease of me out of the way.
Exactly, Coach.
You know what? Leave me alone.
Ryan, look, you can either agree to no interruptions like the rest of us or just sit this week out. It's pretty simple.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
All right, well, in Ryan's place, it is the official sixth man of the assembly call. He's an assistant basketball coach at Western High School, the host of Sports Talk with Tonsoni, and the founder of the Delphi Bracketology Club, which is currently ranked number 1 in Bracket Matrix.
I refuse to believe that's the case.
It is the case, and he is the coach, Brian Tonsoni. Coach, it's Tonsoni time. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm just enjoying the last week of summer vacation as an educator. I have to go back and next Tuesday and start working again, which is always one of the perks of my job. And then you asked me to be on the show and you start out with a segment about meals and nutrition. And, so that got me a little bit excited, probably 2 things that I need to do a better job of. From a basketball standpoint, competition and speed. And the social media stuff is awesome. And like Andy said, they're going to, give you the best things that happen in practice. But going back to developing their bodies, I think that's been great. I think we've seen that. That's exciting. That's going to make the players better. But the level of depth, and you're hearing it in the football program, you're hearing it in the basketball program, that speed and strength is going to lead to better depth and more competition. And the final word for my opening line is we are going to see competition for playing time and spots, and that's just going to raise the entire team in a way that I think all of us will be happy with.
Absolutely. All righty. Well, here's what we're going to talk about this week. We're going to do a quick recruiting update here at the end of segment number 1, and then we're going to dive in to our Evan Fitzner offseason breakdown, talk about his strengths and weaknesses. We dug into some of the numbers, watch the tape, as Ryan likes to say. And so we'll talk about his strengths and weaknesses and how we see him fitting on this year's IU roster. And we have a bunch of questions that you all submitted. And so as we always do, we will answer your questions as well. All of that coming here on this edition of Assembly Call Radio. Before we get to this week's top story, talking about recruiting, a quick reminder.
It's about money.
I want to quickly remind you that there are 2 great ways to shop online for tickets and for IU gear that also help us out at the same time. Remember these 2 URLs, iutickets.shop and iustore.shop. When you use those URLs to buy IU tickets or gear that hopefully you would be buying anyway, we actually get paid a commission for referring you. And these commissions really add up and help us cover the costs of running the show, which now apparently are going to involve Coach Tonsoni's personal training sessions with Cliff Marshall.
I think I need to hire Cliff Marshall to work on my body.
iutickets.shop will take you right to SeatGeek, where you can immediately find the best deals on IU basketball tickets, as well as IU football tickets, concert tickets, and other live events. As a bonus, use the promo code ASSEMBLY to get $20 back after your first purchase. iustore.shop will take you to the official IU online store when it's time to shop for birthdays, Christmas, or just get new stuff for the upcoming season. They have gear for everyone, kids and adults, and they always have a ton of stuff on sale. Again, please bookmark iutickets.shop and iustore.shop and use them when you are looking for tickets and for IU gear. Taking just that one extra step before you shop will help us raise the money we need to cover our most important expenses like website hosting, podcasting equipment, and revenue share distributions to Ryan.
I own a third of the company. Sorry, Jerod.
Once again, the URLs are iutickets.shop and iustore.shop.
Thank you.
All righty, you are listening to Assembly Call Radio. I'm Jerod Morris here with Andy Bottoms and the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And guys, I don't know how much you paid attention to the recruiting news this week, but obviously the July open recruiting period has ended. And, while Indiana fans wait for the 2019 class to crystallize with actual commitments, and it feels like we moved, I guess, one small step toward that as Armand Franklin announced his final 3 of Indiana, Purdue, and Xavier, although it seems like most people feel like Xavier and Purdue lead there. And then you saw Trace Jackson Davis earlier on Thursday night announce that he's going to be announcing his final 6 soon. So, the 2019 recruitments kind of continue to move forward step by step. But we started to see the 2020 and even the 21 recruiting classes take shape a bit with some more offers doled out by Archie Miller and his staff. So just in the past week, we saw new offers go out to, and this is in the class of 2020, Andre Jackson, the number 53rd ranked player in the class, a 6'6" shooting guard from Albany, New York. Namari Burnett, number 58 in the class, a 6'3 shooting guard from Prolific Prep in California, and Caleb Love, the number 42 ranked player in the class, a 6'3 point guard from St. Louis, Missouri. That adds to Ethan Morton out of Pennsylvania and Zach Loveday out of Ohio, who also have offers. And, Andy, the thing that I find interesting about this, we know that Archie really wants to focus, inside out, focus on the state and kind of, the breadbasket around Indiana. The class of 2020, the highest ranked guy from the state of Indiana is Anthony Leal from Bloomington, who's number 93, and then Trey Galloway, number 109 from Culver Academy. Neither of those guys yet have offers. And so I think one thing to watch as we kind of, go through, look at how this class of 2020 continues to take shape is do Archie and his staff eventually feel comfortable enough with those two guys to offer them, or because they don't feel comfortable, are they going to take a little bit more of a wider view of recruiting some of these guys from New York, from California, from Missouri, because they just don't feel like they're finding the talent in the area that they want? Because inside out is nice, but you've also got to get players who are good enough to take you where you want to go in your and your staff's estimation.
Yeah, I mean, I think each year is a little bit different. I mean, you look at this, the 2018 or 2019 class, and we've talked before about how there just aren't a lot of point guards, or just, just certain areas, whether it's positionally or regionally, it all just kind of ebbs and flows, and it's there. And I think that's just reflective of, there's not as much in Indiana versus this year, where you've got, two of the top, let's say 20 guys that are from the state, and a handful of others who are around in that range as well. So I think it's just something that's cyclical with the talent. I do think they'll look at those guys. The one thing that you'll notice as you go down the list of the guys that you mentioned, positionally, they're almost all guards and almost all shooting guards. And I think Leal and Galloway both kind of fall into that camp to a certain extent anyway. So I think that becomes a little bit challenging. Seems to be guard heavy on offers and looking at those guys. And when the in-state guys are, recruiting rankings are what they are, but, on the lower end of that, then it might be a different story if there was an in-state big guy who was available, but I don't believe that's the case for that class. And also trying to figure out what the positions of need are going to be on the roster. And I think as we look forward to next year, one of the spots we kind of worry about or think about is shooting guard. I think you got to look beyond that and say, hey, even if you get somebody who might be a one-year guy or a grad transfer to help fill that, you're going to need those kinds of guards in the year after, and somebody who's going to be able to step in right away. And at this point, maybe they don't feel like those guys are going to be able to do that, but a lot can change over between now and the time that those guys would commit as well. So don't think it's necessarily any cause for worry or now. I think just kind of the way that the class is shaken out regionally.
Yep. Yeah, just something to track as we move forward. And then it was also interesting to note that an offer went out to Terrence Clark, a 6'6 shooting guard out of the Boston area, who is currently the number one ranked player in the class of 2021. So Archie and his staff shooting high there. And another interesting name to keep an eye on is class of 2021 guard Christian Lander. He's a 5'11 point guard from Evansville, currently ranked number 14 overall in the class of 2021. And while IU hasn't offered yet, although they've been tracking him and have a relationship developed, Illinois has offered him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that recruitment. But those are two names for the class of 2021 to keep an eye on. Coach, do you have any thoughts on the recruiting before we move forward and start talking Fitzner?
Just briefly, looking forward to seeing how Archie fills his 13 scholarships in years to come. I think it's difficult to have 13 top-rated players on a squad, as we've been asked in questions, who's going to see playing time. And I did a little exercise of trying to dole out minutes on my own, and it got to be quite difficult. And then you combine that with our discussion last week about redshirting. Do you see someone like the in-state guys in 2020 come in and maybe be a redshirt candidate, or the lower ranked guys? Do you get some of those at 11, 12, and 13 that you can develop to be 4 or 5 year program guys, so you could fit in the top level guys? I don't have that answer. I don't know what's best. I think that probably for each school is what the coach feels comfortable with. But I think we can identify that as Archie goes on in another year or two to see how that happens. And then we never want any transitions other than graduation and going to the pros, but that always happens occasionally in programs based on playing time and so forth. So we'll start to get a better feel about the whole recruiting. We know the inside out, and that's been well documented. And then the next level of recruiting is how deep is he going to go, because he likes to play 8 to 10 guys and keep everyone on a path to to stay with Indiana. So that's what I'm looking forward to with recruiting down the road.
Yeah, and as we've mentioned, programs like Villanova have shown a path for how you use, combine smart redshirting with still getting, top flight guys. So hopefully that is something that Archie and the staff will be able to figure out as we move forward here. All right, coming up, it is time to talk about one of the newest Hoosiers who has been earning rave reviews for his shooting in summer workouts. It's Evan Fitzner. What are the grad transfer's biggest strengths and weaknesses as he enters his final season of college hoops? We will discuss. Stick with us. All righty, and that's a wrap on segment one. Hello to everybody watching live. Great to see you all here, as always. Brian said soon this will be an entire show of soundboard drops. The goal, just going to record as much as possible, and then when people can't show up, I'll just be able to come on here and do the show myself.
Man, it's not a terrible idea.
It'll help us get through those winter breaks when scheduling is
we could have done this 2 years ago. If we had these sound drops 2 years ago, you could have just pressed like repeat, and then you basically just overdub the name of the school.
Yeah.
Tonight against Michigan.
Yeah, exact same show.
The defense was incredibly poor.
Oh man, that hits close to home. That's
Still too soon. We're not able to talk
so
about
many bad memories of that season.
True.
All right, so Ryan had a family obligation tonight. Coach, thanks again for always being willing and able to step. You're like the Max Bielfeldt of this show.
Better than advertised.
That's right. That is right. Okay, so let's talk about structuring this segment. I guess we can maybe keep it focused on stats, strengths, and weaknesses. Focus on him this segment, and then focus on fit for the next segment. Does that sound fair? Maybe keep both of them to about 10 minutes.
Yeah, that works.
All right. Andy, do you have any insight on like how he was used at St. Mary's or any of those things?
Not a ton. I mean, not more than I would probably gather just by looking at like Ken Palmer, things like that. I mean, it seemed like he played a little bit less as he went. They play a really slow pace, so they don't necessarily always need to play a ton of guys.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was just a case of that where they had a pretty veteran team and things like that. But
didn't they go from basically playing two big guys to wanting to play more one at a time?
Yeah,
he might have been the odd man out. I don't know that for sure, but I think in the first 2 years, their 4 and 5 were both bigger guys.
Yeah.
If I look on Ken Palm of depth chart last year, their top lineup had the power forward and the small forward both 6'6". Fitzner was part of the one that was used next most behind that one. And if I look back a year or two prior, if I look back, a little bit. They had a 6'9" guy playing power forward the year prior, and then Fitzner was part of the second best lineup or not second best, second most used, I guess.
Yeah.
And then if we look back, I'll look back one more year just to see. But they were a pretty veteran team, so I bet the year before looks a lot like that.
The interesting note is his freshman year is when he played the most minutes and contributed the most, and he actually played a lot more and did a lot more than Jock Landale did. And then it flipped in the years thereafter.
Yeah, because it looks like his, I guess this would have been his sophomore. No, his freshman year. He was used predominantly in the top two lineups, and the guy who would play power forward the following year was the center, and Landale was pretty much buried.
Yeah.
And then the 1 year that pushed over the guy who was playing center to power forward and pushed him a little bit to the bench. And then last year they seemed to go a little bit smaller, like Brian said.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that in reading the sheet that you put out is 4% of his possessions were post-ups.
Yeah, he doesn't post at all.
And so that tells you what kind of post player is. And so if St. Mary's was looking to have a guy who played better in the post, that's why he got pushed back, which then will kind of give us, when we talk fit in the second one, a little bit of where he'll.
Yep. Yeah, floor spacer. He's a good cutter, So, I mean, I think he's a pretty smart offensive player in terms of recognizing, spacing and where to be. But yeah, he's not a guy. I think it was sophomore year he posted up like one time, I think. Probably just by accident. Someone just like threw him the ball when he was running down the lane or something.
Maybe.
And he's really good in transition too. And I think most of that was on trailers. But man, he is a good shooter. His shooting numbers are unbelievable, especially when he's open. Like if he's open, you can pretty much just count it. I mean, we're talking like 97, 98th percentile type stuff. It's really good.
And to come in and just start this summer and have most of the players talk about how he's the best shooter on the team.
Yeah, pretty good.
Compliment, or B, we just haven't had shooters last year, and we're starting to get caught up a little bit. But
Yep. Okay. Well, let's hop in and do this.
Yeah, it's crazy. If you look at his, like, I was just looking at his game log from last year. In one of their NIT games, he was 8 of 14 from 2-point range and didn't take any threes. But I mean, there's no other game where he shot more than 5 twos, and even that was extremely rare. Oh, there's one other game he shot 6 against Georgia.
Yeah.
But he played a lot. I wonder if somebody got in foul trouble, because he played 30 minutes, and before that, he hadn't been playing very much at all.
Yeah.
Looks like Landale might have gotten in foul trouble, so they played him there a little bit more. Or maybe maybe this other dude got hurt. One of the guys that was playing power forward, he only played 15 minutes. So,
yeah, and and we definitely need to focus on that. His defensive numbers not real good.
Are they not? They're not great.
Not
I haven't
great.
looked yet. I wanted to be surprised by it. So
not great. So we'll get into that. Okay, so let's focus on that this segment, and then we'll talk fit and stuff next segment. All right, you gents ready?
Yes, sir.
Let's do it. Here we go. Okay. You are listening to The Assembly Call, a weekly show about IU basketball, plus a post-game show that goes live during the season as soon as every IU basketball game ends. If you ever have to miss all or part of an episode of The Assembly Call, there are 2 great ways to catch up. You can subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search for Assembly Call, or you can watch our live video broadcasts on Thursday nights and after all IU games on YouTube. And by the way, the YouTube broadcasts also feature the between segment banner that doesn't make it into the radio or podcast edit of the show. And last week, that included this loving thought from Ryan on what he would do if we ever had an Assembly Call meetup in San Diego.
I'll stay at my parents' house. I don't want to stay around you guys.
That clip, not taken out of context, Coach, if you'll remember. That was the exact context that was used in. So that was a fair use of that drop. To subscribe to our YouTube channel, go to youtube.com/assemblycall. All right, I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with Andy Bottoms and the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And guys, let's talk about Evan Fitzner. He is the grad transfer brought to this Indiana team, obviously for his shooting, as we're going to get into. That is his main strength. But let's talk real quick just about who he is. He is a 6'10 player, is about 230 pounds. He is from San Diego, California.
San Diego chicken.
Yes, so even when Ryan's not here, we have to have some kind of San Diego mention on the show. But he comes from a very athletic family. Dad actually played hoops at Stanford. His mom, an All-American volleyball player at Hawaii. Brother, San Diego Prep Athlete of the Year as a volleyball and football player back in 2012. So obviously good genes, comes from an athletic family, and has had his moments of being a very, very productive player at the college level. And, you know, what's interesting is you look at his career at St. Mary's, is that he started all 35 games as a freshman, all 34 games as a sophomore, and played 23.5 minutes per game as a freshman, but then just 15.1 minutes per game as a sophomore. And then as a junior, it fell off even more, where he only started 7 of 36 games and still played around those 15 minutes. So you really saw his role change over the 3 years, although when you look at his numbers, it's not like he became a worse shooter or a drastically different player. It seems like maybe, Andy, and maybe you can talk about this a little better than I can, that, or Coach, you know, that maybe what they were trying to do changed a little bit, and his particular skill set just didn't quite seem to fit the alterations they went through, or what they wanted to do from a style perspective.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this a little bit during the break, that Coach had thought they went to a little bit smaller lineup, at least last year. And that seems to be the case, just looking at the Ken Pom lineup numbers. You know, both their small forward and power forward were just 6'6". And he, you know, just didn't, you know, kind of lost playing time there, just ebbed and flowed over time, really, as they had different guys go through the program, as Jock Landale, who was, you know, one of the better players in the country last year, really came on. He seemed to leapfrog him a little bit on the depth chart. And so, as we'll get into some of the things that you'll talk about later, potentially just I don't want to say not a fit for what they were doing, but they're a team that plays really slow and they don't play a lot of guys. And so if you're on the outside of that, kind of starting lineup, you're not necessarily going to get a lot of run unless somebody gets in foul trouble. And so when you look at the lineups that were most used on KenPom, he was part of the, kind of second most used lineup, I think both of the last 2 years, but that lineup that was used the most for them last year was used almost 50% of the minutes. So they really stuck with the guys that they had. They had a really veteran team, with 3 seniors. And so they really, kind of rode with those guys, which is easier to do when you're playing at what is typically one of the slowest paces in the country.
Yeah, and Coach, one of the things that has been interesting this offseason is, he's obviously on campus. Players have seen him go through workouts, and we've heard, Duron Davis call him the best shooter on the team. We've heard other comments, and we've seen the videos, and the numbers back it up. Like, whether it's in practice or in games, if he's open from 3, it's going in. I mean, he's an elite level shooter in catch and shoot situations, especially when he's open, which, we remember what the shooting looked like last year at times. That is something that we're obviously all very excited about. But what does it tell you that he's made that much of an impression on his teammates this early on?
Well, he's got a skill that is being recognized by his teammates. And if you're being called the best shooter, and that was a weakness of our team last year, but we've brought some guys in that can shoot. And so that just speaks volumes for how good his shooting actually is. And that's something that Archie then will find within the offense that Archie likes to run, how to play him. But shooting is something that when it's gone, man, it really hurts, as we said or watched you guys talk many times on the post-game shows. I don't know that you can never have too many shooters. And when you really bring someone off the bench, if you have guys who are 6, 7, 8, 9 in the rotation and they're a threat, that spaces the floor. So yes, you look at the minutes and the minutes dwindled, but if he comes in and gets those same minutes and can put up those offensive numbers with the talent that we have in the Big Ten, with the Big Ten schedule, I think that's a very nice piece to the puzzle. But that shooting ability is going to be how he gets on the floor. And Joel in chat said defense is the key, and Archie doesn't mess around. And he's going to have to be able to guard and find a spot to guard. If he can't guard down low, can he guard a 4 out on the floor? Because, again, I do think Archie has a defensive mindset. So his shooting will get him on the floor. Can he rebound, and can he hold his own on the defensive end for the minutes that that Indiana is going to need them to play? But you can't sometimes it's hard to teach shooting that's that decent.
Don't tell that to Ryan. He thinks he can do it. Hold that thought on the defense, though, because we need to get to that, because I've got some numbers here. You're listening to Assembly Call Radio. I'm Jerod Morris here with Andy Bottoms and the coach, Brian Tonsoni. So let's talk about Evan's strengths. And, you look at the efficiency stats at KenPom. You look at the, kind of the deeper numbers at Synergy. And they all paint a pretty similar picture. This is a guy who gets most of his offensive production as a shooter. For his career, he's 41.5% from three-point range. That's on 301 attempts. That is outstanding. Just last year in his junior season, in unguarded catch and shoot situations, he averaged 1.6 points per possession, which is crazy. That's in the 93rd percentile. He was in the 96th percentile as a sophomore. So he is just outstanding in those situations. Also really good in pick and pop situations. He's good in transition. He's a good cutter. So, that tells me that he's a good shooter. He's a skilled offensive player. He's a smart offensive player. And so we know that's what he's going to bring to the table. And he's a pretty good defensive rebounder. Last year, his defensive rebounding percentage of 17.3%, that would have been third on Indiana after Freddie McSwain and Juwan Morgan. And he's an okay offensive rebounder. So those are some of the strengths that he's going to bring to the table, in addition to the fact that he's a decent shot blocker. Where he struggles, offensively, he's got a low assist rate, but he's not a guy that you're looking to create much for you anyway. He turns it over a bit too much for a guy that's playing a role like his, and he's not a guy who posts up. That's really striking for a guy who's 6'10", looking at the numbers. He posts up on maybe 4 or 5% of his possessions. It's very, very low. And then defensively, Coach, this is where the numbers get a little bit ugly. Last year, he gave up 0.985 points per possession, which was in the 19th percentile. His sophomore year, he was in the 29th percentile, a little bit better as a freshman. But where he struggled, according to the numbers, where he especially struggled was in defending jump shooters, and he was just average at defending post-ups. So the two things that you just said that he would need to be able to do to get on the court from a defensive standpoint seem to be things he struggles with a little bit. So it seems to me that as we, kind of project Evan forward this year, a lot of it, we may be looking at it from the standpoint of, are his offensive contributions, the floor spacing, the three-pointers that he's going to make, are they compensating for points he's probably going to give up on the other end? Or do you think that Indiana playing a different style defense might somehow help him fit in a little bit better on that end?
You just read my mind about, I have to go back and see what St. Mary's did defensively. I think if it's different, then that gives us a little bit of hope. If they covered in situations in similar ways that we're going to ask Evan to cover, then that gives us some pause. You also got to believe in the coaching staff too. And I know Bennett's a great coach at St. Mary's, but get in and get surrounded with some talent and playing some talent, that there'll be a little bit of a regression to the mean, or a regression to the average a little bit. And if we're asking him, for 14 to 18 minutes, kind of where I would project him to be, there's ways you can cover up the post up. You can double, you can dig. If you have a weak matchup there and they're going to isolate that in the post, then the coaching staff, by scouting, will have some ways to help that I think they'll have to go to if that's the case.
Go ahead, Andy.
Well, I think a couple things may lead to some of those defensive numbers, which are concerning. Certainly, I don't mean to downplay that part of it. I think the post-up piece, one of the things that he talked about in coming to IU is really having to try to get stronger and some of the things like that. I think that helps him in the post a little bit. And I think it's a little bit, somewhat self-fulfilling when you're a guy who really plays on the perimeter offensively, as you mentioned. It hurts your offensive rebounding because you're not really in a position to do that. And two, you're not really putting on a ton of weight to bang with people because you're not posting up yourself. So I think that part of it to me seems more fixable. The other thing is, as a guy in his position, I mean, Jock Landale was more of a, guy's going to sit inside. He's going to guard the opposing team's 5 every single time. And in a league like the West Coast Conference, you're going to have more people play small. And I don't know that him trying to defend small ball power forward is probably an area where he's really going to be able to do very much defensively. So if you assume him playing at IU is probably him playing the 5, I think, and he gets stronger, I think the kind of defense that he's going to need to play on the inside becomes a little bit easier, I guess, when you take some of those things into account. Now, maybe I'm just connecting dots that aren't really there, but I think when you think about the league that he's playing in and what he was asked to do, it does it's somewhat explainable. But at the same time, if it doesn't get fixed, I don't think Archie's looking for excuses as to why something didn't get done correctly. And so it'll give him a chance to do that. But I think the strength piece, as we've seen some of the work Cliff Marshall's done, it doesn't take him very long to really do a good job and help some guys transform. And I think that part will help him a lot on his post defense.
Yeah, that all checks out. Makes sense to me, Andy. I like it. Okay, coming up here on the Assembly Call, we continue our discussion about Evan Fitzner. What do we project his role to be on this year's team, and how will his impact compare to Indiana's last sharpshooting grad transfer, Max Bielfeldt? We'll discuss next. Stick with us. All righty. Well done there, fellas.
I really need to complete this set of starting lineups. There's some really good ones here on the back. I mean,
what other ones are there?
You've got, let's see, highlights include Harold Miner.
Baby Jordan.
Baby Jordan, as it were. The Warriors had 3 available: Chris Mullen, Chris Webber, and Latrell Sprewell. That's exciting.
Wow.
What others? Derek Coleman, the Chicago Bulls trio featuring Scottie Pippen, B.J. Armstrong, and Tony Kukoc.
Oh, man. Joel, by the way, Joel is scaring everybody in the chat saying Fitz against Ethan Happ might not be pretty.
We can't mention that name. Los Angeles Clippers, Dominique Wilkins. I did not even remember that he played against or he played for the Clippers, but apparently he did. Bobby Hurley, Dominique Wilkins played for
Oh.
the Clippers. You guys remember that?
I don't remember that.
Played long enough to get a starting lineup. So, Bobby Hurley, Sean Bradley, such great draft success stories as those.
Well,
Hey,
yeah, I think you need to
Jerod,
work on completing that set.
Yeah.
Storm update. It's scheduled to hit at 9:45 or 8:45 your time. So
Okay,
if
so
I
if you go out,
if I
we'll know why.
dark, yeah, that nasty storm is hitting Delphi here, and I just got an alert on my phone. So hopefully I can make it through.
Okay, well, we will. If you pop off, I've got some drops here we can play for you.
Just string it together with whatever you need.
Be like you're still here. Okay, so let's talk fit, and probably talk about maybe what lineups he would fit best in, kind of what role we think he's going to take. Andy, I'll defer to you on that first. I'll just kick it right over to you coming out of the break, and then I'll just end it with a little callback to Max. And really, this is meant more to just remind everybody of how impactful Max was, because man, his numbers are awesome. I forgot how efficient he was in so many different areas. So just to remind people that expecting what Max brought out of Evan is probably unrealistic, because Max was a pretty special type of player in grad transfer and a special kind of fit on that team. So always good to remember the happy days of Max Bielfeldt. True. Better than advertised, always. All right, you guys ready?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Welcome back. You are listening to the Assembly Call. Here is a little fun fact for you. In addition to our postgame show and weekly radio show, we have over 5,800 IU fans from around the globe who subscribe to our email newsletter.
There's a high-level operation going on out there.
And you can join too, and it's easy. Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. You will get our weekly Six-Banner Sunday news roundups, as well as our postgame analysis emails once the season begins. It is all free, and it will make you a smarter and more well-informed IU basketball fan. Again, go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 and join for free today.
Make no excuses.
I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with Andy Bottoms and the coach Brian Tonsoni, and we are doing our offseason breakdown. We've done almost every player so far. We're doing Evan Fitzner, Indiana's grad transfer for this season. And Andy, we just talked about Evan's strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, shooting, the main strength, a huge strength of his. Defense, we know, is a struggle. So knowing that and kind of understanding the role that he had at St. Mary's the last couple of years, he's played about 15 minutes per game. What are you projecting forward for him in terms of role this year? And what lineups, what lineup constructions do you think will work best with him in there, understanding his strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be surprised if he was a starter at the beginning of the season. You've got a lot of young guys. But even so, I think he'll play a decent amount at the beginning just because he's got that experience, despite the fact that his minutes dropped a little bit and fluctuated over his time at St. Mary's. I think that kind of veteran presence will be good. In terms of who he fits well with, I think if you look at a front line that's him and Juwan Morgan, it allows him to maybe play outside a little bit more. And while Juwan can do some things from a face-up perspective, I think you could have him as the back-to-the-basket guy and Fitzner as the catch and shoot guy playing on the the weak side. Somebody Romeo can kick the ball to if he gets there. I think some pick and roll type scenarios would be advantageous for him, or pick and pop probably more based on his skill set. I don't think probably a little bit late for the Leopard to change its spots in terms of moving and turning him into a back to the basket guy. And I don't really think when you go back and talk through what this team's deficiencies were last year, he has the ability to address those by doing what he's already done. So if he can get better defensively, I think that helps. I don't know that you see him. I think those lineups with Juwan, guys like Juwan and Romeo, who are able to attract attention and set him up, are the ones that are going to be most advantageous for him, because from a catch and shoot perspective, it sounds like that's really where that's his bread and butter.
By the way, who I think he'll fit really well on the floor with is Al Durham. because I think if you put Al and Evan in pick and rolls together, that's deadly. Because Al, I think it might surprise people how good Al was in pick and roll situations last year. And I mean, we know how good he is going to the basket. So if you've got the choice of either having to, stop Al from going to the basket, but then you've got Evan, popping, or, you guard Evan and then you've got Al who's able to go to the basket, use those floaters. That's going to be tough for defenses to defend. So I think watch out for those two guys playing together because I think they could be really effective. Coach, what do you think in terms of fit for Evan and maybe lineups that he works best in?
I think Andy was spot on there with the initial thought of the lineup with Morgan. I think he's going to be a matchup guy. When you have a 5 that can't guard on the perimeter, I think you might see Fitzner play, whether that's a starter or off the bench. And then you can have matchups with Smith in the post if you need to run him in the post. You could even run Romeo in there if he has an advantage because you have your big playing out on the perimeter. I also think that he'll play a lot of the 4 backing up Morgan. So, Morgan gets in foul trouble. We're better this year because we have a veteran like Fitzner who can come in and at least play the perimeter portion of Morgan's game. And then you can combine him with a low post scorer, of whoever's going to be that low post scorer, whether it's Race or Moore or Davis if he's healthy. You could play a combination of those two. And again, I think go back to what Joel said in the chat room. It depends on can you guard that perimeter player. If the other team's got a small 6'6" forward, that might be a matchup where he sits out. But I think you can Archie likes to do a lot of things in transition. And one of the things is the drag screen, which the big is following the action and runs right into a ball screen in the initial, 5 or 6 seconds of the shot clock. And you mentioned it with Durham, but bring Finnessy off, bring Green off, and you've got to guard that. And if you pick and pop with Fitzner, now that creates a long closeout. And now you got Smith and you got Morgan flashing underneath or to the baseline. And that just stretches the defense when you have that guy. Most pick and roll situations are the roll to the basket or rolling into a post up. You have a guy who can pick and pop, and if he's the best shooter on the team, you have to rotate your defense, and that puts a lot of pressure on the defense. So I think that's, again, if you're looking for offense, and hopefully he can get on board with the strength and conditioning and the speed to start guarding to the level that Archie wants, because I really think he's an asset that is a little bit underwhelmed by fans and pundits a little bit with what we have as far as multi-dimensional players.
Yeah, I think to go back to the matchup point that Coach brought up real fast, like think about Michigan State playing with Nick Ward. So you pulled Nick Ward away from the basket, and if they try to put him on Juwan, I don't think that's a great matchup. And if he has to try to guard Fitzner out on the floor, that's a problem. Now, the flip side of that is somebody has to guard Nick Ward on the other end, and that's where the part about Fitzner getting stronger and being able to handle those post-ups a little bit better becomes really important. But I think that's probably I try to think through other matchups like that in the Big Ten, but I mean, that to me is the one that really sticks out, where you've got a traditional post guy who wants no part of having to guard somebody out on the perimeter.
And the depth issue is great too, because last year when Morgan got in trouble, we all kind of panicked and tried to survive those 7 or 8 minutes. He picked up 2 fouls and it was, oh my gosh, are we going to be okay at halftime? Well, we got people who can score, and not only Fitzner, but the other guys coming in. That's going to help too in those situations where Morgan's not playing the minutes that we need him due to foul trouble.
That was also our homage to Ryan, as we both interrupted you over the last couple of minutes. So that was just a small tribute that we wanted to provide since he couldn't be here tonight.
It's fine. I like it. So I think it seems fair to expect him to play about 15, 16 minutes, probably score 5 or 6 points a game like he has. It would be a shock if he shoots anywhere under 40% from 3-point range, because he's going to get good looks, and we've seen him do it for 3 straight seasons now. So it's very easy to talk ourselves into how this is going to work and to think about all the beautiful offensive possessions and what those will look like. My biggest enduring lesson from last season is that I felt like last offseason we talked ourselves into the idealized versions of every player and got kind of overly excited. And then when that didn't happen during the season, we kind of saw what happened. So I'm trying to take a little bit of a different tack this offseason. So let me ask you this, Andy, and I'll get your thoughts, Coach. If this doesn't go well, why will that be? With Evan, like if he just, struggles, doesn't find a role, like why will it be if it doesn't go how we're talking about it right now?
I think to me, there's probably 2 potential reasons. One of them is good and one of them is bad. The bad one is he struggles defensively, and then he can't figure out how to do what Archie wants him to do on that side of the floor. I don't feel like he's going to be asked to do things offensively that he's not capable of doing and he hasn't shown before. So I don't think he's going to forget how to shoot all of a sudden. I think the defense is the question. The potential good reason is maybe the young guys just come along really well, and you want to roll the dice and play those guys a little bit more, which in the long run for the program is a good thing. But for me in this case, I mean, you got a grad transfer who's here for 1 year. There's really no downside in that. It's not like missing on a recruit where you got to figure out what to do with a guy for a period of time or eventually recruit over him or do whatever. This is a pure upside to me. If he comes in, shoots the ball well, figures things out defensively, he's a huge asset for the team. And really it might be somebody that we look back on and say, hey, he really pushed him over the edge in a couple games. If it doesn't, you got a ton of young guys waiting in the wings that you're just going to give minutes to in the end. And while that might not work out great for the player in the long run, you're giving him the opportunity to do what he does at a place that he wanted to go at a high level program. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I think there's very little risk. But those two reasons are the things that I think might not make it go well.
Sums it up pretty well. Coach, anything to add to that?
That was well said. I think those are both the issues. But going back to the second part of that, I'm not sure they bring him in if they had the confidence at the end of the year when they recruited him that the three young post players they just weren't sure about Race and Forster and Moore. And so bringing in someone who started a lot of college games and has 3 years and brings that veteran presence, I think they really brought him in here for a purpose, not just necessarily an insurance. But I do think that if the other young men play, then Indiana's got a really great problem on their hands of excellent players. And but I think, again, I just see that the flexibility that he allows Archie with the lineups will be more of the reason why he plays. But again, defense and rebounding at the level that needs to be done in the Big Ten is the main concern I think that we have to have. And if he gets passed by, that should make us all happy.
Yeah, and Archie doesn't seem like a guy who does anything on a whim or without a plan in place. So we can all be confident in that. I'm Jerod Morris. This is Assembly Call Radio. I'm here with Brian Tonsoni, the coach, and Andy Bottom. So one last point I wanted to make about this. It's really easy, I think, to look at Evan Fitzner and think about Max Bielfeldt, a big guy coming in. He's a good shooter, a grad transfer, really filling a specific need that we had. And so one of the things I wanted to do in preparation for this is just look back at Max's season and kind of see what Evan would need to do to have the same impact Max did. Because you think back to the impact he had on that 2016 team, and there's absolutely no way that team wins the Big Ten without Max Bielfeldt. I mean, he was, such a consistent force, had really big moments in tight games where Indiana really needed a veteran to step up. And the thing I was struck by, kind of looking back at Max's numbers, is they were a lot better than I thought. And so I actually think comparing Evan to Max or expecting what Max brought is probably an unfair expectation for Evan Fitzner. Max averaged 8.2 points and 4.5 rebounds, which aren't numbers that bowl you over. But you remember he was coming off the bench. He played 43.6% of minutes, which I think is more than Evan will play, certainly based on what we've seen him do recently and the role we expect him to have. I don't know that he'll play quite that much unless someone gets injured. But Max shot 45.3% from downtown. He actually had a block percentage of 2.6 and a steal percentage of 2.8. And to put that into context, those are really good numbers. Like, those are nationally ranked numbers. Evan, I think he had a block percentage of 1.1 or something like that. Doesn't get steals. So Max really contributed in those two ways. And then his offensive rebounding percentage was 12.2%, which was top 100 in the country. And his defensive rebounding percentage was 18.4%, which is better than what Juwan did last year. So, it was fun going back and looking at that. And, look, we love Max on this show. He was better than advertised in 2016. And so it's always fun to go relive that. But I just think as you kind of frame your expectations for Evan as an IU fan, look, if he can reach the impact that Max Bielfeldt had and be a sixth man of the year, that would be unbelievable. But I think that's probably a bit beyond what he'll contribute this year. And then with that said, none of us expected Max to do everything that he did as a grad transfer. So I guess we can put that out there as maybe a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow if Evan can possibly get. Any thoughts on that comparison, Coach, just how, as players?
Yeah, you know, I'm a stat guy. I look at numbers, but you also got to look at what the team needed in 2016. We needed someone to rebound and guard. We had a lot of guys who didn't like to guard on that team. They liked to score. Hopefully this year, Evan's deficiency is covered up by guys who have been in the system for a year and have more of a defensive mentality. So to compare the defensive stats might be different. I think what I would say and what I'm going to look at is, does he improve? Is he one of those graduate transfers that comes in and plays better than he did at his previous school? We've had tons of Max was one of those. You've seen him across the Big Ten. We've also seen some players that are grad transfers that don't come in. But I think his role to help this team is going to be average defensively, and the offensive ability that he brings is going to be really the strength. And I think Max was probably brought in more for depth and defensive rebound. And then when he started hitting the 3-point shots and all that stuff, it was really a bonus. Let's hope the improvement is similar to Max, and the impact in his role within his designed role is just as much as Max. And then we have a very good grad transfer. Good point. Andy, you want to have the last word on Evan Fitzner?
Well, I think the Max comparison, I think it's natural in the sense that it's a big guy who you're bringing in as a grad transfer. But I think, you know, the things that Max did well from a defensive rebounding and even an offensive rebounding standpoint are things that he had done, albeit in limited time at Michigan. You know, his numbers for those two statistics were basically what he had done at Michigan prior to that. What he had not done was shoot 3-pointers. He was 11 of 39 coming into that season. And then, you know, as you said, shot 45%. So it's, if you want to really take the optimistic viewpoint, you say, all right, well, Fitzner's thing that he was already doing really well is shooting the basketball. And like Max's rebounding, that can continue, and he'll improve in some kind of area that you didn't expect. And for Max, that was 3-point shooting. Perhaps for Fitzner, it's something different. But I do think because of Duran's injury and because of the young guys, he's going to get a chance to really entrench himself in the rotation pretty early on. And what he does with that opportunity, you know, we'll wait and see. But I think early season play is going to do a lot for him, because if he plays really well, he's going to put himself in a position where you really can't think about lineup a ton of time without him and what he brings to the floor. If he doesn't, as young guys get more acclimated to the college game, his minutes are going to dwindle. So I think the first, 6, 8, 10 games become really important for him. And I think it also determines what flexibility IU has with Duran. If he plays well, we talked about potentially redshirting him medically. I think you guys touched on that last week based on one of the questions. If he gets out to a hot start, I don't want to say you don't need Duran at that point, because I think that's not true, but it gives you some flexibility that you might not have had otherwise.
Yep. All righty, coming up in our final segment, we answer your questions. We got a good one about Hoosier Hysteria and thoughts that we have for improving that, and several others, a few recruiting ones. That is coming in our final segment. Stick with us here in the Assembly Call. All right. Let me see where we're at here. Good final points there, Coach and Andy. That was good stuff. That's where 43-55. Andy.
That's 8:05.
Yeah, so we've got about 7.
I'd probably be able to do that faster if every time I didn't have to think in my head. It's 52 minutes, right? Yeah, it's 52 minutes. So that gives like a second and a half or 2 seconds of me just trying to remember what I'm subtracting from.
Yeah. All right, so the first question we'll play, Ben Malcomson sent one in about ideas for Hoosier Hysteria. So do you guys have any ideas for how to improve Hoosier Hysteria before I put you on the spot? Or do you want a moment to prepare your ideas?
You mean the actual event?
Yeah, the event. I think the way he frames the question is like to kind of get more fan engagement and more excitement and stuff. I don't even know that. I mean, I think you could just roll a ball out and have these guys play and shoot around this year, and people would be pretty excited. I don't know that you need a whole lot of bells and whistles.
Yeah, I think it's the ability to sustain that. I feel like the energy is always really high as it gets started, and then you've got lulls and different things, and then it kind of peters out a little bit, and then I don't know.
You know what I wouldn't do? Seth Greenberg. That's what I wouldn't do.
This is going to be blasphemy probably for a lot of, but as a coach, I don't like Hoosier hysteria because I worry about injuries. I like it for the recruits, and that's a big part of it. I like it to share with the fans and have the fans see our program. But, I'm the type of guy that I don't like any tomfoolery. If I'm with my guys, I want to be working on closeouts and blockouts, and I want to be working on getting us better so we don't get beat by Indiana State by 21 points in the first game.
Man,
anything that takes us away from that, I mean, I don't like. You could ask my wife when we meet up sometime. Picture day in high school, I hate it because the guys are around, the girls' programs around, they're taking all their pictures. The mom wants to bring money and check in, and then after an hour of that, then I got to get the guys focused in on a practice, and it's always the worst practice of the year, always. And then I'm kicking people out, and it's just not a good situation. So, as a fan, I like it, but. And then as a coach, I'd rather just watch them practice and see how Archie runs practice. But the fans wouldn't like it because that's the boring part. When everyone leaves, that's when I want to get down close and understand how they scrimmage and what they're doing. And everyone's leaving to go to Knicks because the dunk contest is over. So sorry if that's blasphemy.
No, you have to do that
to
now.
The fan base,
No. I expect that was your rehearsal. Now you got to do that for the podcast. That was good stuff right there.
Oh man, I go out on Indianapolis radio and I'll be a hunted man down the south. When I go to Buffalo's, they'll be throwing chicken wing bones at me.
I think it's just, and I can say this when we're on it. I think it's just hard to balance the what all the people who are there want to get out of it. And I think Brian's kind of made that point. So you can go to him first on that. But I think that's ultimately the issue is you've got some people who want to see the, highlight reel dunk stuff, shooting, whatever, a scrimmage that is a scrimmage that is like not really actually basketball and nobody's doing whatever. And then you've got people who like it the way that Knight used to do it, where it was like a practice and a hush would fall over the crowd as he pulled some dude over to yell at him. And then everybody would clap after the fact and like practice would go on.
I think I would rather see a real peek inside what happens than
that TV show with Cream a couple years ago was awesome, where they just filmed the practice.
Yes, it was. That was awesome.
I can't enjoy the dunk contest because I worry about injuries. People trying to exert too much in front of the crowd and do a 360 somersault degree of difficulty, and then they're down for
yeah. Or see you guys try something that they miss 7 times and then keep trying to go through it.
Yeah.
The last time on assembly call, because I'm driving viewership away with my anti-Hoosier hysteria rant. It's been nice.
No.
I would guess compared to many other fan bases, there are probably a lot of people who agree with you.
I bet a lot of people agree with you. I agree. Okay, so we got to get in. So we only have 7 minutes. This might be the only question that we tackle, but we can get to other ones. I mean, I agree with you. I tried to think about this, and I would actually take stuff away more than I would add stuff. I would like a more pure basketball experience myself. So I agree with you. All right, good question, Ben. Here we go. Where are we at here? And I have his question to play, so we'll actually play that and listen to it. All right. I'll keep you posted on the time in there. We have 7 minutes and 29 seconds for the segment. Here we go. You are listening to the Assembly Call. We are wrapping up another week of talking IU basketball. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and the coach, Brian Tonsoni, and it is that time of the show where we answer your questions. And we did have one submitted on our voicemail line. Again, that number is 317-ROB-MAKE, which I think is 317-762-2653, I believe. You have to double check me on that, but it's Rob Make. But you can call, leave a message. We can play your question right here on the air. So the first question comes to us from our good friend, Ben Malcomson, who runs the site Hoosiers-United. And he sent us this question about Hoosier Hysteria.
My name is Ben Malcomson. My question is for all three of you. With September 29th Hoosier Hysteria event fast approaching, I thought it would be fun to get creative on ideas for the event that can increase fan exposure and excitement. The majority of our fan base that regularly attends the event are familiar with introductions and certain activities such as the slam dunk contest, three-point contest, and scrimmage. If you had the power to add, subtract, or revise activities before and or during the event itself, what would you do?
So we just spent a few minutes during the break discussing this question, and I have a feeling Ben's going to be a little bit disappointed by our answer. And Andy, I think it'd be appropriate now to just cede the floor to Coach, and let's get his thoughts on Hoosier Hysteria.
I don't like Hoosier Hysteria. Sorry to all those fans out there listening, but if I have time, I'm a coach. I want to be with my guys and working on closeouts and ball screen defense and shooting and getting better so that we don't get beat by 21 against Indiana State in the first game. And that's just a coach speaking. I'd like to see the practice. I'd like to see the drills that Archie runs so I could have a little bit better knowledge. I understand that fans like the 3-point contest and the introductions and all of that, and it is an exciting time. It's big for recruits. Recruits want to see that excitement. So I don't totally dislike it, but I can't watch the slam dunk contest without worrying about injuries. Joel said in chat, Coach probably didn't like the lake video. I like the lake video. I like seeing our guys have fun, but when they were jumping in the lake, I was wondering how deep it was. That's a coach mentality. I saw that 4 guys on the tube, and I'm like, okay, who's getting thrown off? Make sure you're all right. As a coach, you see everything from the coaching prism, and it's injuries and can we get to the first practice? So if I were to do it, it would be, start practice and do your stretching. And then in all honesty, maybe a combination of trying to make some practice drills and show how you compete in practice. A lot of coaches with their regular drills have competition woven in and explain kind of some of the things that you're doing without giving away the strategy. Have an interaction that way might grab some fans. And Andy has an interesting take as well as about how hard it is to please everyone. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of.
And here's the thing, like, it's more than just for the fans. This is also a big event for the recruits. So I think you have to do some stuff at the beginning with some pomp and circumstance, get everybody excited. So you've got to do some fun introductions. I think you've got to let the big recruits have their moment, like Archie and the staff did last year when guys walked across the floor. So I am fine with all of that stuff in the beginning. I have no real interest in the 3-point contest, Coach. I'm with you. No interest in the dunk contest. And while I enjoy watching the scrimmage, it's just because it's getting to see the new guys play and getting to see everybody out there. I would prefer more of a real experience, like seeing what they would do in a real practice. You mentioned off air how great that practice was at the Big Ten Network broadcast with Tom Crean a couple of years ago. That was awesome because you got to see what it was really like. So yeah, I don't know if that, makes me a purist or an old fuddy-duddy or whatever, but I'm kind of with you. I would like do the stuff at the beginning to get the excitement going and make it a big thing for the recruits. But personally, I would like to see more of a real experience. And I think Indiana fans are smart enough and basketball junkie enough that would create some excitement and enthusiasm. I don't know that you need some of that other stuff. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe we're all out. Personal perspective. Andy, what do you think?
It's interesting because I feel like we're all going to kind of end up saying the same thing. And I think the hard part that I brought up after is I think different people want to get different things out of it. And I think the three of us and potentially a lot of other people listening would be in the same camp of, I want to see what I want to see what a practice is like. If you've had enough practices under your belt, which this year isn't really going to be the case, I would like to see a scrimmage just to kind of see the guys in action, how they fit together, some of those kinds of things. But then you've got other people who are really into the pomp and circumstance, the excitement of the dunk contest and things like that. And as Brent said, they start getting ready to scrimmage and people are hitting the exits because they want to go someplace else. I think the difficult part is how do you please those different sets of people who want to get something very different out of it? And in addition to that, I think it's hard to sustain the excitement. The excitement at the beginning is immense. They do the introductions. Everybody's really excited. And then you move into like a shooting contest, which unless somebody just truly catches fire is not super exciting. And typically college dunk contests include a lot of guys missing dunks. The NBA contest, includes that at times as well. And so then you've kind of got, the air comes out of the balloon a little bit for things that should be exciting and can be exciting in small moments. But there's a whole lot of it. It's like you going through the show to pull out different like sound drops, right? Like there'd probably be highlights you could pull out of a 3-point contest and the dunk contest, but the entirety of it is really not all that great. That was a terrible analogy about the show because the entirety of the show is fantastic. But you're pulling those out for a different reason. But I'm sure there was a good analogy in there somewhere. But I think that's the hard part. It's just you can't sustain the excitement at the beginning with doing those kinds of activities, but you feel like you have to do those kinds of activities. But I think I would be similar to you guys and try to take those away or take one of them away or somehow pare that part of it back a little bit.
Well, I think we all agree you've got to do what's best for recruiting. So if you came to me and you said, look, the dunk contest, the 3-point contest, the scrimmage, this is what recruits want. This is going to be the best show for recruits. Fine. Like that to me is probably the biggest and most important audience for this thing. And I'm fine sacrificing my own personal desires for what Hoosier Hysteria is going to be if it plays better for recruits, because it's a big showcase for that. But if it's not, if you're just asking me, as Ben's question was, from my perspective as a fan, what are we looking for? I think more Indiana fans than maybe one might expect would want a more genuine experience for that Hoosier Hysteria. Now, maybe that's a little bit harder with it being so early, Andy, which you mentioned, which is a good point because things aren't going to be that crisp. But let's see some individual work. I'd love to see Ed Schilling's, individual work with guys. Let's see him do some of that stuff. I would be fine watching that. But again, we come on here every week and, do a show weekly talking about stuff in the offseason when there isn't much to talk about. So maybe we're just crazy. Coach, we're going to give you the last word on this quickly.
Well, it has to be a combination of stuff, as you said. But I think within that, you can do some combinations. Heck, the layup line can be your dunk contest. Just go up and dunk it and spend 10 minutes dunking the basketball. Almost everyone can go out there and get loose by dunking as better than a contest. Or do some shooting contests, one team versus the other within the offense, catching at the elbow, turn, shoot, count to 10, and explain that this is a shot we get out of the offense. I think you can do some things to combine both to keep interest.
Yep. All righty. That will do it for us on this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. Or you can always subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com/join or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening. We will be back to talk IU hoops again with you next week. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
This was the most ridiculous ordeal of my life.
All right. Good show. Ben, that was a great question.
That was a good. It provoked inspired conversation, which is what any good question should do, right?
We could have talked more about that.
Even though we feared our answers might have been disappointing to people, it was still good, good passionate conversation.
I bet a lot of people were nodding along.
Yeah, well, the chat room loved it, I think, from what I'm reading here as it's rolling. But my last assembly call, and then Ben will cancel my show for tomorrow night because it was his question and he wanted to hear something else.
But I bet Ben's in the same boat. I bet he would answer the same way. I don't know. I don't think you need all that stuff. Bring Victor Oladipo in as the MC. That's what I would say.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I like. Go ahead.
Sage Steele was really good too.
Have had rough goes of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Archie is not cut out for being an MC or a hype man for an event like that. No. I mean, I get excited when he talks, but that's just me. Andy, what were you going to say?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I think some of the off-season stuff in these videos is cool because you get to see a little bit of like the personality of the guys. Like, but again, to other people that might not be super exciting, but to people who are going to sit and watch 30 plus games with these guys to find some way to, kind of build on what you've already done there from the off-season would be useful. I just don't know what that is, but yeah, I just find that the other stuff just takes too long for a fairly limited, payoff in the end of it. And but it's not like you can just, once the dunk contest is going awry, it's not like you can be like, well, we're just going to scrap this. You're committed at that point to seeing it through.
Actually, I would love it if Archie did that. Just the first round is terrible. Yeah. Someone kind of lands awkwardly. That's it. We're done. We're not doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be fun.
And Jerod, you're like me though. Don't you worry on that dunk contest? I don't enjoy it until it's over.
I'm constantly worried, especially Juwan. I don't think we should let Juwan do anything until the games start. Put him in a bubble. I just, especially after you've seen a guy go down, it's just it's stuck in your head. Yes, I do fear that.
the thing is, they've had a practice earlier that day because no coach is just going to have a day where they could practice and ruin their day of practice. So not they have to be somewhat tired because you got to get something productive out of the day. And then you go into, the dunk contest. The other, people would tell me is, get over it. These guys dunk every time they go in a gym. They could get hurt just walking out there and doing their first warm-up dunk.
I know.
But I think it's a little different when there's 15,000 people are cheering. You try to do a little too
adrenaline.
much.
Yeah.
Adrenaline. And
I'm with you.
I don't know. Maybe I worry too much, but.
No, I'm with you. I say just split them up by class and then play Family Feud. And then we'll get to learn a little bit about their personalities.
There we go.
I would actually enjoy that. I wasn't.
Seriously, I'd rather do stuff like that where you get to know the players.
Yeah.
Than those contests, but who knows?
All I know is that question produced an epic rant for the YouTube listeners. That was that was good stuff.
And
we're gonna play that to
drop that will to be used later with you talking about tomfoolery. I
gotta remember you're recording this stuff, and it'll come back to haunt me for years.
I'm gonna send that clip to Jeremy Gray and ask him to play that on the jumbotron before Hoosier Hysteria. That's what'll get people excited.
What did I say again? What was it?
The whole thing was just great. It was 4 minutes of anti-Hoosier Hysteria. It was beautiful.
My season tickets for football are being revoked right now.
It was good. It was good. I appreciate it.
I know, as Jamil says, all the big schools have these events. They do, and it'll be good and it'll be fun. We're being a little bit ridiculous, but also fairly honest with how we really feel. So,
hey, I got a big group hug for the coach in the chat room. That's a big one, David, too. I mean, if you see me in person, that's a huge hug. A lot of body here. Hire Cliff Marshall. You guys make me ready for this guy. Play that again. I missed it.
Oh, this one?
Have a defibrillator ready for this guy.
All right. Well, this was fun.
This was fun.
Yeah.
Andy, let's find a time that we can get together and go over hosting on Zoom.
Okay.
So ready for a couple weeks from now.
Okay.
But we can do it whenever it's convenient. Let me know. And then, are you good for next week?
I will be on next week. Next week is probably, there's not really a night that's good. Soccer starts for Hannah, so she has something between soccer and basketball every night of the week. So
no, we can do it on a weekend or something. I can be flexible. Just let me know. Okay. It shouldn't take too long.
Okay. That'll work. We got a few weeks there, right? You're the 23rd is the one you're missing?
Yeah, 23rd.
Okay. Yep. All right. Good deal.
Yep. All right, gentlemen.
All right, gents.
Excellent show. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We will see you all next week.
All right. Sounds good. Later.
See you guys.